Hello and welcome to another standard video. Today we are revisiting the black-white Erase the Past archetype with the addition of the Sackville-Bagginses from the Hobbit, a 2-mana 2/2 legendary creature. When they enter, we get to sacrifice another creature or artifact. If we do, we not only draw a card, but also create a treasure token, and then whenever we sacrifice any token, including treasures or creatures, then a target opponent loses 1 life. So the Bagginses give us a bit of card draw, they give us a win condition by sacking our tokens, and then the extra treasure also helps us double spell. So it's a card that does a lot of work, and of course being a creature is pretty important in any Erase the Past strategy, since the goal is to put a lot of our creatures, especially 1 and 2 drops, in the graveyard, and then eventually bring them all back for just 4 mana with Erase the Past. And then as long as we have a combination of some sacrifice fodder, some sacrifice outlets like Umbral Color Zealot or Bartolome, which can sacrifice creatures and artifacts at will to either surveil 1 or get a +1/+1 counter, and then combine all those creatures with something like a Blood Witch, which drains the opponent for 1 whenever a creature dies, we now get to essentially drain the opponent to death and win the game on the spot. So that's really our game plan, which hasn't really changed much ever since the first Erase the Past decks. At 1 mana, we also have the Snarling Gorehound, which lets us surveil 1 whenever a creature with power 2 or less enters, which is most of the creatures in this deck, so that can help hit our land drops, dig towards Erase the Past, and also put a lot of creatures in the graveyard. Then there's the Infestation Sage and Nesting Bot, which both die, leaving behind a token. The one from the Sage is a 1/1 flyer, so it's a bit more exciting than just a 1/1 servo token. But all these tokens also then synergize with the Sackville-Bagginses. If we later sacrifice those tokens to one of our other effects, they can also make the opponent lose 1 more life. Same with the Greedy Freebooter, which when it dies leaves behind a treasure token and lets us scry 1. So that's more treasure tokens to help us ramp and to synergize with the Bagginses. Then Voice of Victory is another staple in the archetype, stopping blue decks from maybe countering or Erase the Past, as well as generating a pair of warrior tokens with Mobilize when it attacks, and those tokens naturally get sacrificed end of turn, which will also trigger the Sackville-Bagginses, but of course we have a bunch of other effects we could sacrifice those tokens to get extra value. And then a Servondame also grows as creatures die, picking up extra +1 counters, and then when Servondame dies or is put into exile, if its power is 4 or greater, we get to destroy up to 1 target non-land permanent, so that gives the deck a little bit of interaction at least. And then our only creature that we're not getting back with Erase the Past is still worth including, Sephiroth Fabled Soldier. When it enters or attacks, it lets us sacrifice a creature we control. If we do, we get to draw a card. And then it also has a similar effect to the Vengeful Blood Witch, draining the opponent for 1 when our creatures die. And whenever 4 or more creatures die in 1 turn, this also includes opposing creatures, then we get to transform Sephiroth into the 1-winged angel, a 5/5 flyer that makes an emblem with that same life drain ability. So that can also give us an alternate win condition, and then when the angel attacks, we get to sacrifice any creatures we'd like to draw that many cards, so that can also aggressively dig for Erase the Past, which usually wins the game if we get to cast it with enough creatures in the graveyard. Then another important utility land in the mana base is the Dalkovan Encampment, which has the Mobilize 2 ability built in. We do need to activate it before attacking, and then we get to make a pair of warrior tokens, which can then also synergize with all of the aforementioned cards. It does require a swamp to be in play to enter untapped, but we do have 4 basic swamps, plus the 4 copies of Godless Shrine, which will also enable the encampment. Otherwise, we've got 1 Plains, and then all the remaining black-white dual lands that we currently have in Standard. 1 Shattered Sanctum, not ideal early in the game, but at least it's not going to enter tapped on a key turn where we need to cast our Erase the Past. So I've been liking the 1-off Sanctum over maybe something like Starting Town, which is another possibility. So yeah, this is my current configuration. The deck should be able to survive rotation in 6 months, even though we do lose a couple pieces. Most of the important cards are from Foundations and from more recent sets, so they will stick around in Standard for a couple more years. So it's not the worst investment if the archetype looks fun to you. So yeah, let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play with a functional hand. Got some sacrifice fodder, some sacrifice outlets. Start with the freebooter, since we may need the extra scry up against a red-white and an equipment deck. This should actually be a winnable matchup in the sense that as long as they don't trample their creatures, we can chump them for quite some time. So then it doesn't matter how large they get. This turn, I think still Zealot over Bartolome. I value the Surveil more. And no reason to get aggressive here, can play defense. So the Mauler gets a discount when activating equip abilities. If they're not running any main deck Graveyard Hate, which they're probably not very likely to be running, we can eventually overpower them with a big Raise the Past. They do have Dane's Company into Keeley. So Keeley eventually equipping something like a Leyline Axe for free could be pretty scary. Mauler still offering the trade for Freebooter. Yeah, I think we just take the trade. And then Scry 1 is not a Surveil, so don't need Voice of Victory here. And then land is ideal, so we can Nesting Bot into Sephiroth. Find a land. And if I were to attack, we could transform Sephiroth right now if they take the trade, so that seems worth it. And our opponent's just going to take it, understandably. Okay, game goes on. They might be able to play Keeley, some 1-mana equipment, suit up the Company with lifelink and attack into Sephiroth. For now, another Mauler. And a Matic, giving +2/+2 and Ward 1. Alright. So they found a way to set up the Company. Now what I could do is jump with a 1/1 token, sack it to the Zealot so they don't gain 4 life. Still trigger Sephiroth. Is that worth it? If I'm trying to transform Sephiroth, it probably isn't, because I would need the extra sacrifice fodder for next turn. So I'll let them gain 4. Alright, so step 1, play Blood Witch. And then I don't mind attacking with everyone. Sacking the 1/1 token here. And I'm okay trading Zealot for Mauler, because then Sephiroth transforms. My draws have not been particularly exciting, so could still lose this. So damage happens. Play Bartolome, and then I need to sack the Blood Witch to transform Sephiroth here. So we've got the One-Winged Angel. Will that be enough? My hand is basically a blank, but at any point if we top deck Raise the Past, we're back in business. Happy to draw any cheap sacrifice fodder, since that can turn into more card draw of Sephiroth. They do have a Raban to equip stuff for free. And Keeley. So they get to gain 4 again. Even though I could trade Bartolome if I sack Sephiroth, doesn't seem worth it. Yeah, the lifelink makes the race a little bit harder to win. But we really just need to survive long enough to eventually overpower them. Another Sephiroth, we can keep both in play at the same time. So I think I will play it before attacking, since I might draw something else I can sack to the One-Winged Angel. And a Blood Witch is good. Play Blood Witch. Attack. Sack Blood Witch. And find Servant Dame, which can also be used as removal. Opponent falls to 4. But he will get to gain some more life here. So do they have something like a Leyline Axe? They do. So that with lifelink is still a lot of damage. So yeah, still anyone's game. two decks that don't really pack a lot of removal, so they both get to do their thing. They both involve dealing a lot of damage and gaining life. So we could be here for a bit longer. And then they could move the Matic onto the company, but then Sephiroth has a good block on Raban. So yeah, they're not going to make use of it. We take 10, fall to 11. And the Bagginses, a very good draw as well. Okay, so what's my turn gonna look like? Play Serve on Dam into the Bagginses, sacking Sephiroth. Unless we think we can make another One-Winged Angel, then I can sack the One-Winged Angel that's in play. But I don't think that's very likely here without a sacrifice outlet. Because yeah, how would it work? This attacks, I get to sack any number of creatures. Other creatures, so cannot sack itself. I could also attack with Sephiroth. I could let the Sephiroth trigger resolve first, sacking the One-Winged Angel. And then the One-Winged Angel trigger still resolves. I guess that could work. Alternatively, I can just grow Serve on Dam to make sure I deal with a Leyline Axe, which would maybe be safer. Let's see, so 1 creature dies. 2, 3. Yeah, would not be enough to transform. So I'll just sack Sephiroth here, keep it simple. Did end up drawing a Gorehound, so I might have been able to set it up. And go to attackers. And then I think I'll sack 2 creatures here. Draw replacement Bagginses. That's useful. Opponent falls to 2. So now I should have it. If I play the Bagginses, sack Serve on Dam, answer the Axe, and then... let's see. Yeah, we get to trigger Sephiroth, and then I'll have a treasure which triggers off the Bagginses for lethal. So yeah, there was a lot going on this turn. Finally found our Raise the Past. But I do not think we will need it. And just sack the treasure for the last point. Awesome! On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. Triple Sackville-Bagginses is maybe a bit much. But yeah, we can still curve Sage into 1 copy, draw card. So maybe it's still worth a try. Could have also started with a Verge, I suppose. Alright, opponent on Auras. So can attack for 1. Play the Bagginses. Finding a sacrifice outlet that we can activate at instant speed could be important if we want to stop lifelink from helping the opponent. At least the good news is that they're likely going to exile the Bagginses. No, still going for the 1-1. So then they do not have an attack this turn. So, yeah, can attack, play Sephiroth, sacking a Sage, or we can try to get the Voice of Victory in play, and then Sephiroth the next turn is going to be more impactful once the Voice triggers, assuming they don't have more removal. Yeah, I guess we'll try that approach. Did not think I would have a good block, so did not bother leaving the Bagginses on defense, even though we don't mind jumping with them. It's going to be a Spellbook Vendor. So Scavenger up to 4 toughness. Could have maybe triple blocked it. I'm fine taking 5. Okay, so then I can play Sephiroth before attacking. Sack Infestation Sage. And then if it plans to play another copy of Sackville-Bagginses, I may as well attack with the first one. Our opponent blocks Voice of Victory with Spellbook Vendor, still takes 4. And then, yeah, we still get to play our Sackville-Bagginses, lose one to the Legendary rule, which will also help trigger Sephiroth. So, still get to sack another creature to the Bagginses to draw. And then, since one creature has died so far, I guess we need to have 4 die to transform Sephiroth. So then I can sacrifice the insect token, end of turn we lose 2 more. So then Sephiroth should transform. Although, I guess I messed up since, yeah, we had sacrificed a creature earlier in the turn. So I could have just sacrificed a warrior token as opposed to the insect. And Sephiroth would still have transformed here. But, yeah. We now have the One-Winged Angel. We get Emblem with that same ability as Sephiroth. So we'll see what our opponent can do about it. Well, another Sheltered by Ghosts is certainly a good start. Exile our 5/5 flyer. And they also have a Feather of Flight. That's problematic. And that's also where still having that 1/1 flyer would have been helpful in jumping. So now we could be in some serious trouble. So I'll still trade for the vendor since we have another Bagginses. Opponent back up to 17, get 2 triggers. Down to 15, and Bartolome the draw. Okay, so we'll start by attacking. And get our damage in. Play the Bagginses. And then I can sack the nesting bot so that warrior tokens give us an extra Bagginses trigger end of turn as well. And then Gorehound the draw, so we can play that first. Play Bartolome to surveil. And then encampment's not going to be good enough. I can sack the warriors to Bartolome, which will trigger both the Emblem and the Bagginses. So, let's see here. Do we actually have lethal? Opponent falls to 6. So we have 2 tokens left. Those represent damage with the Bagginses. And then 4 creatures. That's 4 more damage of the Sephiroth emblem. So that should be 6 exactly, just double checking here. Token is 2. Treasure's 1, and then Gorehound, Voice, and Bagginses is 1 more each. So I think we actually got there. After what seemed to be a game that had slipped away from us. So yeah, the Bagginses putting in a lot of work. Can sack the treasure to itself, can also sack it to Bartolome, doesn't matter. Just make sure to sack it before we sack the Bagginses themselves. And there we go, awesome! On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. We've got a functional hand. Just need to fill the graveyard as much as possible to set up our Raise the Past, or have our opponent destroy some of our creatures. And Voice of Victory is pretty good against blue decks in general, so likely to get answered. Yeah, I guess it makes sense to play it here. And then if they do not have a counter spell, they won't be able to remove it end of turn. So then we wasted their mana. Opponent will tap out for a stock up. So this is a good turn for Sackville-Bagginses potentially, since it also triggers of the mobilized tokens. Alright, so can attack first. And then I could sack the warrior token, or I could sack the Infestation Sage. I guess it still makes sense to sack a 1/1 token. And our land is perfect. So then I could still play a Zealot, which can then also sack the token to surveil, maybe look for land number 4. And another Raise the Past is difficult to turn down, but it might be a little greedy since I don't have anything in the graveyard yet. Possible our opponent does play a Sweeper. Also have to think about the implications of a cover-up exiling Raise the Past from my graveyard at some point. So this is not an easy decision. I think I'm still gonna bin it here. And then I could also decide to sack the Infestation Sage to surveil. Opponent does have the Heartless Act. So response, sack the Sage. Another Sackville-Bagginses, fine to have in the graveyard. And then I could just sack the 1/1 token, which triggers the Bagginses as well. Because their opponent's forced to either answer the voice now, but then either way we get to resolve Raise the Past. Gorehound in graveyard. Could sack the Bagginses as well. Sure. And Bartolome in graveyard, so drawing a land would be ideal. If not, we still have some other plays we can make. So I get to draw, find a Gorehound, so not the land I was hoping for. Alright, so then attack with voice, play Sephiroth second main to sack a 1/1 token and draw, still seems reasonable. As opposed to going Gorehound plus maybe Servondam or Gorehound plus Sage. Opponent is now falling to 7, then to 6. So they don't have a lot of wiggle room, and they do still need to deal with the board. But yeah, I guess they only have 5 mana value in the graveyard if they go for a cover-up, so they cannot collect evidence. And yeah, there's a cover-up. So yeah, luckily for us, I still get to keep my Raise the Past, but still can't find land number 4. And next turn they could easily cover up again, and this time exiling Raise the Past. So yeah, we kind of missed our window. So now what makes sense? I guess just go Gorehound plus a Blood Witch. Alright, please don't have a second cover-up. It's just going to be a stock-up for now. But now without Voice, of course our opponent could keep up a counterspell, but at 3 they also need to deal with what's in play. So between a Rock and a Hard Place, Hex the Blood Witch, fall to 2. And with 1 mana, there's not too many counterspells that could stop Raise the Past, just a spell Pierce. So, yeah, what are the odds? Start by attacking. Alright, luckily our opponent taps out, so now we can safely Raise the Past and win the game in a multitude of ways. But we've got Zealots plus Vengeful Blood Witch, and that's more than enough. Sweet, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the play with what looks like a keepable hand. Get to start with a Gorehound, so we can go surveilling. Encampment is untapped thanks to Godless Shrine. And then hoping to find something like a Sephiroth or Raise the Past. The Umbral Color Zealot can also help us surveil some more. Opponent on a blue deck, found Sephiroth. Sadly don't have the Voice of Victory, which is pretty good against these blue decks. But I'll go double 1-drop. I can maybe look for a Voice of Victory. Bartolome isn't bad, another sack outlet. Although given that I'm going to play another 1-drop, maybe we just want to fill the graveyard for Raise the Past instead. Don't need land. Opponent opts. So Hydro-Man is next. Seems like a good turn for Sephiroth. For a single blue, I don't think they can counter it. Spell Snare could still maybe hit a 2-drop. And then maybe go for Freebooter here, since we could use the extra Scry 1 to find some more action. Don't particularly need Infestation Sage. So when Sephiroth attacks, we can once again sack a creature. This time maybe the Infestation Sage. Also have the Encampment, which we could activate. So definitely not blocking, since they can pump Hydro-Man. And now a Waterbending Scroll can be a nice source of card advantage. Hydro-Man does not count as an island, so they still only have 3 in play. Alright, so options aplenty. Maybe start by playing a Gorehound and see what the response is, if anything. Yeah, activating Encampment has to be worth it here. We get so many Surveils of double Gorehound. Opponent does have a Drowner, so that'll lock down Sephiroth. But I still get to trigger the Encampment. And then those tokens dying also trigger Sephiroth. There's my Raise the Past. Certainly not guaranteed to resolve against a mono-blue deck, but just good to have available. My graveyard's not super full, just have a Freebooter and Bartolome. So I imagine the Drowner is going to activate to get rid of Sephiroth, which I guess also gets rid of my Raise the Past, maybe something I should have considered. So I'll force them to do it now. Yeah, because it does shuffle. So I could have maybe filled my graveyard more with a Gorehound. At least we forced them to make that play, so maybe they did not get to do what they wanted. Sackville-Bagginses, also a nice pickup. Could play it, hope to draw a land that's untapped, so I can still activate the encampment afterwards. Or we can just double spell, which is also reasonable. Start with a Blood Witch. If they have a counter spell, I think I would rather resolve the Bagginses. And then I may as well attack first. And look for another Raise the Past. So this may get countered. Otherwise I'll happily sack the Infestation Sage. Get more Surveils. Could have also Surveilled before drawing. Another Blood Witch isn't a worse draw, but since we have a bunch more Surveils incoming, we can maybe be a bit pickier. And a Zealot I'll keep, since it helps enable a lot of our stuff. Play Freebooter, trigger Bagginses, opponent falls to 4. And now Zealot with Blood Witch could end the game. Opponent does have another Drowner, so maybe forced to get rid of the Blood Witch, but nope, goes for the Bagginses. Because yeah, the Bagginses still triggers off my Mobilize tokens, since those do get sacrificed end of turn. if they don't get blocked. Now our opponent does have all their mana up for the first time, so they could have all sorts of interaction. So part of me just wants to activate the encampments. Don't want to put the Blood Witch in harm's way necessarily, but everyone else can attack. Keep digging. And Raise the Past will keep. Ooh, Aetherize. Well, that one was not on my radar, I'll admit. So what's next? Just replay maybe a Gorehound. And yeah, Aetherize also meant the tokens did not get sacrificed, so we did not get to trigger the Bagginses. Or the Blood Witch for that matter. So our opponent's keeping it interesting. Yeah, I want to get back to a position where we can threaten lethal on the board, and then still maybe have some leftover mana to cast Erase the Past. So, currently I'm not quite in that position. I could once again activate encampments, just send the Gorehound, and that would threaten lethal, so that's still an option. So then maybe start by playing another Gorehound first. Keep another Raise the Past. I mean, at this point we can also run it into a counterspell, since we've got another one coming up. And then let's say they counter. Can they still survive if I attack all out? I guess they can. They would trade for the Bagginses. Yeah, close call. Maybe I do just go for Zealot plus Freebooter. Start with the Zealots, which would be pretty deadly here. And then the more that gets countered, the more we get back with Raise the Past anyway. Opponent forced to 3 steps. So then an all-out attack seems fine. Trade for the Bagginses, go to 1. It's gonna be a little bit suspicious that we're keeping on top, but yeah, at 1 life. They need a lot of pretty specific answers. Maybe some graveyard hate. They can now cheaply draw with a scroll, so we're finally at that stage of the game. And no doubt they'll have a few more counter spells in hand. Although they did pay the extra mana to spree 3 steps, so it's actually possible that they aren't holding the interaction they need here. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. We've got a functional hand. Can start with Gorehound or Freebooter, facing maybe a blank skeleton deck. Yeah, I guess Gorehound is fine. And then next turn double Freebooter, so we get some Surveils. If they have removal for Gorehound, I guess it would be better to have a Freebooter in play first. So I can play the Bagginses on 2. Close call, maybe I will start with a Freebooter. And then next turn we can play the Bagginses and play some other 1-drops after. Okay, opponent's got the Deep Cavern Bat as Disruption. So probably takes the Bagginses. Then we'll just go Gorehound plus Freebooter next turn. And Zealot is probably not needed when we have Bartolome already. I'll stay back. Don't feel like trying to outrace the Miner, especially if they play Corpses of the Lost here. We need to survive their early aggression and then hope to overpower them with a Raise the Past eventually. For now, I guess I'll still take it, since they're keeping up interaction. So double block would not necessarily work out. And we want more sacrifice fodder for Bartolome. Well, a Regent for 1 was certainly unexpected. So don't need courtyard. And once again. Okay, so this turn the Bagginses can also sack a treasure. And we want to go Gorehound into Bartolome. I guess we have enough mana. Next turn I can activate the encampments. And still looking for Raise the Past. Minor attacks. Could block with the Bagginses and trade. Think I still take 2. And an Investigator to make me discard. Don't think I'll need Godless Shrine. Okay, so activate encampment. And then Gorehound has a free attack. Get to surveil a bunch. We are seeing a lot of lands, so even if I find Raise the Past, it's not going to be super impactful. 4 lands in a row. And then get 1 extra +1 counter. And pass a turn. So we're trying. Also scried lands to the bottom with a freebooter. So we're due for some spells. Alright, more discard synergy with Aklazotz. Opponent stays on defense. And that's yet another land. So I can still go for the encampment play, because I don't have anything else going on. And try with the Gorehound. Or I can attack with Bartolome, which would at least trade for stuff. How many lands in a row can we find? Sephiroth isn't bad, but is it good enough? Opponent's gonna start hitting me for 4 in the air, making me discard. So I'm not gonna have the mana to Sephiroth into Raise the Past, so then it would be a disaster if we draw into it. It does gain me a little bit of life. I think we have to do better. Because I'm not going to be able to play Sephiroth and immediately make the Angel, which could maybe get in the way. Put on double blocks. So if Aklazotz die, they can immediately transform it back, but then at least it's not attacking me for a turn. So then, yeah, I guess I prefer that over taking out the Investigator. And then there's no need to sack anything on the way out. At most I can get 7 toughness, which does not keep it alive. So Temple activates, Aklazotz is back, and they can draw off the clue. Alright, maybe we just have to plan for a Raise the Past happening. Find the Zealots. So I can still activate encampments and play the Zealots. So we do get a lot of surveils. Although if they have any removal for Zealot, we're also just dead on board. Alright, I mean, my graveyard is nice and full for a potential Raise the Past, but there's a good chance we just die here. Yep, to be expected. Were we gonna top deck it? Let's find out. Nope, another land here. So yeah, definitely got a bit unlucky seeing all those lands early. But our opponent got there. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with what looks to be a functional hand. Turn 1. Maybe start with Freebooter. Since this Cry 1 needs to find a bit more action here. Opponent on a red deck with Stadium Headliner, so maybe token aggro. Okay. Don't have to play the Sackville-Bagginses right away. I think we wait on Serve on Dam until we can at least grow it in response to a burn spell. Zealot doesn't have the most threatening board right now, but does hit pretty hard as a 3-2. I think I still like the Bagginses here. Lets me either save the treasure to double 2-drop next turn, or play Infestation Sage. Voice of Victory isn't bad. This is a Scry, not a Surveil, so we're not adding it to the graveyard for Raise the Past. So yeah, I think I'll keep it on top. And then I can still play the Sage and next turn double 2-drop. So that seems fine. So then I want to get the voice going. Opponent a red-black. And it's actually goblins, okay. And a firebrand. So this is going to turn into a pretty grindy matchup. So I'm hoping to eventually find Raise the Past. Voice of Victory, I guess, could die to the Curse Tosser if they deal 1 damage to it with their own Firebrand or have another Blight effect. So maybe this is more of a Zealot plus Serve on Dam turn, so that we can use a Zealot to grow Serve on Dam. And then could attack with the Bagginses. Curse Tosser cannot block. Could have also attacked with the Sage, but I'll keep some extra creatures on defense here. Yeah, there's a Boggart Mischief. So now when their stuff dies, they get to drain for 1. They're gonna attempt to take out Serve on Dam, but I can sack the Sage in response. So that plan worked out. Sacking Firebrand is not gonna work. Oh no, opponent. Because this still checks power, so it doesn't matter that it has 1 damage. Don't need another Serve on Dam. So a bit of a misplay from our opponent. But they do have their Mischief in play. Still happy to just take a draw step, find Raise the Past, perfect. So now Voice of Victory looks better. Can still attack. So we just need 1 more mana, can look for it with a Surveil. Although it's not like my graveyard's particularly full right now. Opponent's got another Curse Tosser. They can go after Voice of Victory. And that will work. So we'll sack it on the way out. And keep a land on top. So I could already Raise the Past, but we could also try and get a bit more value. Since we don't seem to be in danger of dying. But yeah, opponent's already too far behind and scoops it up. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have a reasonable hand. Can start with a Gorehound and then double Infestation Sage on the following turn to start filling the graveyard. And then we have sacrifice fodder for the Sackville-Bagginses. Alright, now the Zealot gives us more ways to sacrifice our creatures. Do want to try and keep a third land on top if possible. Alright. So 2 creatures in the graveyard is already a good value. Opponent a blue-black with a Dreambeaver, so maybe a mid-range deck. We're running Kaito. So then we want to set ourselves in a good position to potentially pressure Kaito if it shows up. So for now, I think that means just attacking. And then playing the Bagginses to maybe still draw into a land. Sack the Sage. Alright, perfect. And then Voice of Victory wouldn't be bad, although I already have a bunch of 2-drops in hand. So now we might want to look for something like Erase the Past. And then Zealot would not let us surveil. Could go for a Blood Witch. But Zealot does mean that I get to start sacking stuff and potentially triggering the Bagginses some more. I think I still go for a Blood Witch. Doesn't hit as hard, so won't be able to pressure Kaito as much. But it does mean that we can maybe set up a 4th lane, so we can double 2-drop next turn. Opponent with another Dreambeavers. Our opponent looking at Blood Witch menacingly, so they might have a removal spell in hand that they want to use. Okay, so this turn I think we start by attacking. Unclear whether Gorehound wants to keep attacking here. Opponent would be able to double block it. We only take out 1 Beavers. Yeah, maybe leave the Gorehound home for now. Kind of hoping they remove the Sackville-Bagginses since we have another now. Okay, damage happens. Blood Witch triggers. Possible they're holding a counter spell instead. Yeah, let's just run out another Sackville-Bagginses. And then we get a bunch of triggers. Sack the Sage. Find a freebooter. And get to surveil a whole bunch more. And our opponent's going to be keenly aware of Erase the Past being in our deck, so they're unlikely to drop their shields if they are running some counter spells. But yeah, we are ahead on board. Say no to another Zealot. Graveyard Hate could also strike at any point. They did have a Bitter Triumph. Takes out our Flyer. So path is cleared for the Dreambeavers to maybe attack. And enable a Ninjutsu or maybe some Sneak card. It is indeed Kaito. So Kaito likely just drawing here.
The housewarming party has arrived.
So then they get to replay the Dreambeavers. If I activate Encampment, we can still finish off Kaito. And that's a swamp. So going for Encampment is certainly an option. Also don't mind just double spelling and getting a few more surveils in. And then if I attack all out, They could trade for Blood Witch, but then Kaito dies, so they would have to chump. So I think that still leaves us in a pretty decent spot. And we have to be getting close to Erase the Past now. So everyone at Kaito. Even though I guess I'm also just close to winning the game if I go face with double Blood Witch. And Zealot being able to sack my creatures. Yeah, what would have happened if I just went face? Opponent can maybe block the Blood Witch. And then I'm better off sacking a creature, so that would have been 1, 2, 3, 4. And then 5, 6. Let damage happen. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we had just enough. But yeah, now Kaito's dealt with. So that's still a win in my book.
Don't worry, I've got an exit strategy.
And it's certainly more exciting to dig towards Erase the Past. Can sack the Freebooter to Scry 1 and Surveil 1. But if our opponent keeps up a bunch of mana, I'm less inclined to do so. Because then our opponent might be keeping up a counterspell for all we know. Alright, drew one anyway. So then I'm not going for encampment, instead just an all-out attack, and then if they want to animate a Sanctuary to block, that's fine by me. They might flash in some other creature, Enduring Curiosity, maybe they have a Tidebinder. Alright, better try with the Zealots. So, in response, I guess I will sack the Freebooter here. Damage happens. And then the 2 tokens also represent 2 damage with the Bagginses. Our opponent did have a Librarian, so now they're tapped out, and Erase the Past is certainly lethal. So I got my wish. But yeah, certainly possible that we had lethal the turn we attacked Kaito. Get everything back. And yeah, that's a lot of triggers right there. Can still sack a creature. And then we've got a bunch of treasure that also represents more damage. There we go, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. What do we think of our hand? Encampment is currently tapped since we do not have an actual swamp. That being said, turn 1 Nesting Bot, turn 2 Sackville-Bagginses is still a nice start. Got the Zealots, got a Sephiroth. Turn 1 Nesting Bot. Maybe get our speed going. Facing a blue-white deck. Did find my swamp at least. So we'll attack for 1. Could also start with a Zealot. But let's get some cards flowing. So if this is the artifact deck, it would be nice to get a Sephiroth in play so I don't get my entire board swept by Starcage. So let's attack first. Maybe they play a Sawblades here. They do not. Could also double 2-drop, but then Starcage would be quite devastating. Now, most artifact decks do not play Restless Anchorage, so this could be more of a blue-white prison deck instead. So then they're more likely to be on a bunch of counterspells. So then, yeah, the double 2-drop strat might be the way to go. Yeah. So glad we didn't get our Sephiroth countered. And then Zealot's more valuable than Bartholomew. So now we've got a bit of board pressure, so they can't sit back on their counterspells forever. The encampment also helps there. Opponent going for split up just for a Zealot. That's fine. So then now I like Sephiroth. Sack the token, which also triggers the Bagginses. And can play our tapped Courtyard. Alright, so at the very least we have our encampment next turn. Especially if they're going to keep up more counterspell mana. And then even if they remove Sephiroth, I'll still have the Bagginses attacking. But ideally, we get to attack with both. They did have a Get Lost, so now I will use the map before attacking, and the map tokens are actually quite synergistic with this as well. A Blood Witch is probably good enough. Opponent's already pretty low, so we don't need much to cross the finish line. It's not as good as a Voice of Victory would be in this matchup, but yeah, opponent's already down to 2. And then sacking the map is another 1 damage. So yeah, the encampment is pretty important in some of these matchups. So now 4 mana, and what's the play? So let's assume they have removal for Bagginses, then I'm not going to get value out of the encampment this turn, or the map. I guess the map would still deal 1 on the way out. So I could start with the map, and then if they remove the Bagginses in the response, I still get to go Blood Witch into Zealot to finish them off. If they don't have removal plus counterspell, which I guess is also a possibility. Yeah, I'll start here. Opponent with Glen Elendros Answer. Okay. That was a very specific one. But yeah, if I go for encampment and attack, they can block, so the tokens don't get sacrificed, but then they die to the Bagginses. If they block Bagginses and a token, then they still die. So I don't really need to cast anything else here. Our opponent's taking 2 no matter what. And there we have it. Sweet. And we get to rank up here as well. So yeah, we got to see this black-white Erase the Past Sacrifice deck in action, and it's a deck that has been in Standard for quite some time already, and it keeps evolving and picking up new pieces with every expansion. And the good news is that in 6 months, none of the important cards are rotating out, since we still get to keep Erase the Past and all of the cards from Foundations, and all of the other cards are from recent sets as well. So while it will lose some cards here and there, it should still be a functional archetype in 6 months' time, so it's a relatively safe investment as well. Currently, it's not the most powerful graveyard combo deck in the format, but we do know that the Bringer of the Last Gift is rotating out, so maybe after rotation this will dethrone the superior Spider-Man deck as the primary Reanimator strategy, but for now it still seems like a pretty decent deck if you want to sacrifice some creatures and bring them all back. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.